Hi, my name is Greg Hodgson, and I'm here at the 2017 Canadian Science Policy Conference with Jesse, Vincent, Herscovici. Thanks for joining us. It was really nice to meet you, and I just wanted to ask you how you're feeling about the conference, and if you could tell us a bit about what you do as Vice President of Business Development at MyTax and how you interact with the different players in the science and innovation ecosystem.
Sure, thanks, Greg. First of all, I'm delighted to be here. I appreciate the invitation. And I'm really happy to see that it seems to be a tremendous success, at least at first view. The crowds are here, and that's a really good sign for Canada and Canadian innovation as a whole. In terms of what I do with MyTax, I'm currently serving as acting vice president, so I'm responsible for the strategy of the business development team as well as the deployment and operations of it. Our team is divided into two major segments. So one part of it is really anchored in the universities, and that's really where we had our first impact, was to know the Canadian university landscape and be able to quickly identify Canadian capabilities and skills around specific needs by the external community. And then we have another part of that business development team who is anchored in industry and who invest heavily in understanding the industrial pain points, the needs, the strategy of different companies and not-for-profits, and then help to work with them to design an applied research strategy and a roadmap with them around their needs and around their current strategy.
Okay, that's really interesting. And how do you go about fostering those relationships then and connecting those two different entities, the industrial side of it and the academic side of it?
Right, so that's really at the heart of it. So it's about really becoming that trusted advisor, being seen as caring for the two communities and truly looking at building win-win collaborations. So in order for it to be successful, obviously the first step is the matchmaking phase, making sure that it is the right match. And then secondary to that is to get a discussion going around areas of mutual interest. So really the tricky part and the key to making it work is identifying the areas that are win-win. So both parties share their needs, share their interests, and then you scope a project, you find the areas of mutual interest, and you focus on those. Not to say that there's not components that will serve one a partner more than the other, that's okay, but you really want to frame the discussion around those areas of mutual interest. If you do that well and you manage expectations well, and you make sure that you've put together a plan and deliverables that answer to the core need of both parties, then the chances of success are much higher. So that's where we've invested a lot of time, is the old boots in the ground model, where we invest in knowing the communities, in knowing the pain points, matchmaking to experts who are able to bring solution to those pain points, and then bringing a conversation around what is the scope of the project, what is the area of mutual interest for it to be a win-win collaboration. So that's where we invest heavily. And then obviously the back end, the paperwork, the contracts, all that needs to go smoothly, and we work hard to try to harmonize as much as possible those processes. But the front end, the matchmaking, the scoping, that's really where MyTax invests a lot of time.
Okay, and how does that scope tend to expand to include science policy, and how is it related to science policy?
Right, great question, and this is part of the importance of a convention like this, where a lot of what is not seen, the intangibles, can be exposed, and to show how does a country try to systematize the innovation within the country, and that's the science policy or the innovation policy component. And MyTax plays a very specific role within that space, and MyTax's space is in bringing in the highly qualified personnel as the human bridge between communities. So that can be between the industrial communities or external society, other organizations, and academic communities. That can be between different companies who are working together through a university researcher and through a university collaboration. And that can be collaborations between Canadians, Canadian entities, and international entities. Again, the pivotal point being that highly qualified personnel, the master's, the PhD, the postdoctoral applied research fellow, who's going to be bouncing between the sites and is going to be connecting these dots, who's going to be these boundary jumpers. So that's the role, the space that MyTax plays within the innovation community. And with regards to a number of the other players in this innovation community, we try not to reinvent the wheel. So we're always trying to look at, within our area, who are other players who are doing or tackling another component of that chain, of that innovation chain. and where are there mutual affinities. And we try as much as possible to partner with organizations who are experts in their domain. So, for example, we have MOUs with the tri-councils, with all 3 of the tri-councils. We have MOUs with a number of NCEs. We try to support a lot of the other initiatives going on in the innovation ecosystem. Always bringing our value in the niche that we support, but then trying to plug that into other initiatives, always in the attempt to leverage, maximize Canadian innovation.
Wow, thanks for that insight. So would you agree then that this role of MyTax of bringing together HQP with not only academia, where they tend to be trained, but also with industry, with government, and relating everything to science policy is going to be a key aspect of Canada progressing forward towards being, say, a global leader in science and technology and innovation?
I think it is absolutely key, and I think it is an untapped potential right now. I think there's an opportunity, there's a value gap, not only in the strengths of Canadian universities, which we're already well established as punching above our weight internationally per capita, and that's very well established. So there's a leverage there, there's an opportunity, a value gap, but specifically bridging or using highly qualified personnel as that human bridge. For a number of reasons, that lowers the risk of what is otherwise a fairly complex, higher risk partnership. So by making that a university collaboration, you are furthering a technology or a specific initiative, and there are milestones and deliverables within the project, but there are also many intangible milestones which may not have been expected. By having that highly qualified personnel bouncing between the 2 sites or the multiple sites, they're acting as connectors and providing that water cooler transfer around what they're working on, where a lot of new ideas will come out of that weren't even anticipated necessarily. Or we'll go and connect different groups within an organization, within a large multinational, for example, who didn't even know they were working on similar things. So that connector role is fundamental to MyTax, both within the innovation ecosystem and helping to connect the different programs as needed around an opportunity. But it's also the role that the HQP plays within their projects, and then many projects are stitched together to create a roadmap and a research program where, again, that glue is the HQP. And I think there's a huge untapped potential for Canada to harness that strength and catapult us into the international sectors, but also in the applied research between industrials and universities nationally.
Great. So I just have one final question then. From your perspective then, what is the greatest value of the Canadian Science Policy Conference?
Interestingly enough, it provides a space to verbalize, to talk about many things that otherwise are happening, not necessarily in silos, but in each of our different spaces. So to provide a venue, a format where these topics can be structured, can be given importance, and where there can be some brainstorming that can happen either through plenaries or the different breakout sessions that can then lead into who knows what other discussions that can happen. But to give that space to take a step back, to share what's being worked on, to tackle some of the topics that in a day-to-day busy hustle bustle are sometimes hard to see that bigger picture. So to provide that venue, I think is a very important space.
I agree. So with that, then I'll just thank you for your time and participating in our interview. But before we go, I'd like to ask you just to briefly tell the people who would be watching where they might go online to learn more about what you do and your work.
Sure, of course. So, of course, you can go on our website, mytax.ca, and we have a search engine where you can look at the projects that we've supported, and you can search those by discipline, by industry, sector, geographic location, and even by partner.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time.
It's a pleasure, Greg.
It was a pleasure to meet you.
Right on.